Hi, just a very brief introduction to this video because as will become clear to you, it's a bit old. Dates back to about 2001. But I do want to tell you that the processes that you're going to hear about continue on, that more and more small media industries are being consumed by larger media industries, so that in 1983, 90% of all media was owned by only 50 companies in the US. So that's all media, television, radio, cable, film, etc. By 2012, 90% of the media was owned by only six. Now, those six have changed, and this will give you a sense of what the current scene looks like. So, number one, the largest media conglomerate is Alphabet, which you may not have heard of, but it's the parent company of Google, which you know itself is huge. Number two, and you'll hear about them, is the Walt Disney Company, which has become even larger. Disney owns television stations like ABC and ESPN, and of course the Disney Network. Disney owns all those theme parks, not only in the US, but worldwide, that generate all sorts of money that results in consumer products, all the licensing that Disney does with cereal companies and clothes manufacturers and so on. They own Marvel Studios, which is, of course, the Marvel superhero universe, which extends not only to comic books and television and films, but all those cereal boxes and Halloween costumes and etc. that you can buy. And they own Star Wars, and it goes on and on. So a good deal of what was once independent media systems with their own structures of governance and ideas of how to produce whatever they're going to produce, news or cartoons or feature films or magazines, are under one company umbrella. So onward to the video, which will show you some of the effects. As outdated as they are, I still hope you will find this interesting and edifying. Take care.
Spaceballs the t-shirt. Spaceballs the coloring book. Spaceballs the lunchbox. Spaceballs the breakfast cereal. Spaceballs the flamethrower.
You know, sometimes you'll hear people say, hey, what's the big deal about all this product placement? I mean, we have had movies like Breakfast at Tiffany's 40 years ago that had a brand name right in the title. But there's a huge difference, and the difference is simply this. We live in a commercial society. If you're going to do fiction, do films on the society, you're going to have commercial names in it. But back then, it was just went with the flow. You had to have a store. Tiffany's didn't make any money off it. Today, it's a whole industry where firms are making a pile of money. And this is where it's really crucial. It's become almost impossible to think of making a big Hollywood movie divorced from the broader strategies of marketing consumer goods.
Movies are generally integrated into marketing through three basic approaches: cross-promotions, merchandising, and tie-ins, and often these three overlap. Cross-promotion is a deal in which a product is placed in a particular movie, and in the advertising for the product, the movie is mentioned.
Why did you stop?
I was just admiring your hiney.
One of the most important criteria right now, in addition to whether a film will sell tickets or be a popular film, that a studio has to consider is how much other stuff you can sell as a result of the movie. Mugs, t-shirts, other products. It's become so important, in fact, that oftentimes with big films, you make more money from the other product sales than you do from ticket sales and just interest in the movie itself.
The point of merchandising is profit, but it's profit from a very cost-efficient point of view. And that is, you can take one central product, you can invest a tremendous amount of money in it, and then you can break that product into material to feed into every other segment of the company. So a movie is no longer just a movie. It's the book, the comic book, the soundtracks, the licensing ventures, and whatever else this particular company happens to be involved in.
Characters are created because they're, in Hollywood's terms, particularly toyetic. They lend themselves to toys, to become toys. And it's not an accident. Some of those characters are actually written into scripts. They become merchandise very easily because they've been kind of created with merchandise in mind. Any kind of film that has animals that act like humans, those make nice toys.
Commercialism is imbued directly into the creative process of making films today in a way that wasn't the case 10 or 20 years ago. The line between the creative side and the business side of making films has been eroded. It almost doesn't exist anymore.
Movie tie-ins are arrangements made with businesses, companies, brands that already exist to tie into a movie in some way.
The most important deal along these lines came in the mid to late 1990s when Disney and McDonald's signed a 10-year deal. So whenever a Disney movie came along, it would be the only thing advertised in the Happy Meal at McDonald's at all 23,000 McDonald's restaurants around the world.
Now at McDonald's, you can get cool plates from Disney's new movie, like Zeus, Phil, and Her. $1.99 more when you get a Happy Meal.
So it's an enormous boost for Disney. Every time they have a kids movie, it gets the entire McDonald's crowd knowing about it and their Happy Meal. And some people think of the Disney movie and they think of McDonald's at the same time. And the trade press has even called them McDisney, and to give some sense of how closely joined at the hip they are. Back in the 1990s, Time Warner made a film called Space Jam, and it was a film that linked Michael Jordan with Bugs Bunny. And it was based on the idea that had been generated in a Nike shoe commercial on television a couple of years earlier. And when they made the film, they basically said, we don't really care if this film does well at the box office, because we think we can sell $1 billion worth of merchandise with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny on the shirts and the cups and the mugs. So anything we get from the box office, in this case, is fringe benefit. And I think here you get to see the logic of the commercial system. Warner Brothers made this film, but they could have made another film that might have been a great film in its own right, but wouldn't have sold all sorts of stuff like T-shirts, mugs, socks.
A new Warner Brothers catalog. Use it to order your Warner Brothers ball cap. And while you're at it, you can order stuff like T-shirts, posters, movie books.
If you look at the way Hollywood is structured now, it's clear that they're not interested in making the best movies, they're interested in making the best deals.
In Hollywood, you believe they're less interested in the pure art of making movies and more interested in the marketing of movies, primarily.
I think that's a fair statement.
One of the things to keep in mind when one goes to see a film at a theater, that it probably has been produced and distributed by a company that also owns television network, music companies, theme parks, lots of other kinds of media activities.
So why has this happened? What's the logic here? Well, the reason is that these companies discovered they can be much more profitable if they're conglomerates. In fact, they can't even survive unless they're conglomerates. So what we've seen in the past 2 decades is the number of media firms has shrunk from over 20 to less than 10 dominant media firms in the U.S. The best example came in the fall of 1998 when DreamWorks released its much-acclaimed film, The Prince of Egypt. But it didn't do very well at the box office. At the same time, the Rugrats movie, released by Viacom, which owns Nickelodeon and Paramount, was released. It did extremely well at the box office. And if you put the two together, The Prince of Egypt was a much more impressive film. It should have done better, you'd think, on surface. But what advantage did the Viacom film Rugrats movie have? Well, the Rugrats movie, made by Paramount, could be pumped and promoted incessantly on Nickelodeon, the TV network owned by Viacom. It could be pumped and promoted even on MTV, which is owned by Viacom. It was pumped and promoted repeatedly on Entertainment Tonight, the TV show produced by Paramount Television. In short, it had massive publicity that the Viacom corporate machine could throw into gear to pump up an audience and prepare it for this movie. And it worked, and made a fortune on this movie that didn't cost very much to produce. DreamWorks, on the other hand, if they want to compete with that movie, what do they have to do? They've got to buy ads. They've got to pay money, because they don't own TV stations. They don't own cable networks. They don't produce TV shows that are carried across the country. And they couldn't afford to do that. That would come out of their bottom line. And that it's now seen that's the primary reason that film did not become a smash hit at the box office. It didn't have that sort of promotional muscle behind it.
And as the media industries tend more and more to be owned by, the same huge few corporations, so that the news divisions, too, are part of the same system. You tend more and more to get news items, big news stories that are really nothing more than journalistic echoes of the latest hype or product from the entertainment side of the business. So you get, for example, Time magazine devoting a cover story to the phenomenon of tornadoes. And I don't think it's entirely accidental that the cover of that issue bears a striking resemblance, visually, compositionally, to the poster for the movie Twister. It came out just before that issue appeared, and which is a Warner Brothers film. See, same parent company. Time Warner owns the magazine and the movie studio, so why not? You know, why not use the magazine's journalistic resources to intensify, to ground the hype? You know, the great meltdown of the media, the fact that all the culture industries are basically owned by the same huge concerns, has had disastrous effects on what used to be known as film criticism, film reviewing. Well, now, most film reviewers work for one or another of the same companies that make the movies. If you look at the blurbs, you look at the affiliations of these reviewers, and these are owned by, as often as not, the very companies that either make that movie or other movies. And even if it's not the same company, they're all engaged in the same enterprise, which is promotional. You know, you can't be a critic and a promoter at the same time. It's impossible.